Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's your
Hey.
man NIC.
What's up, everybody? It's your First Lady, Miss Bernadine Truth. Hello.
How's everybody doing out there? We hope everyone's doing well. We're here. We're back. I know it
Yes,
seems like I feel like we have episodes like once a month, instead of
sporadically
just
at this
every other
point.
week
I
thing.
know. That's that
Um,
summer living. It's a summer living. It's trying to make it all work. It's trying to not die in this heat. I hope y'all are surviving in this heat wave.
oh yeah,
I
I'm
feel
cold.
it.
I'm
Oh,
cold.
yeah, because you're sitting in front of an AC. But like, I'm sweating, and sweating, and
Really? You don't have oh
I'm
yeah,
not
you
sure
need
if I
that
forgot to
AC,
mention
right?
I'm sweating. Yes, but ACs come with AC bills, and I'm not really sure how I
Not
feel
that
about.
much. I hate when people say that. It's like an extra $10 to your monthly electrical bill. You force it.
That's unfortunate that you think it's terrible that people say that, but it's real for me. Okay, so I'm not trying to spend any extra
That's a drink.
money.
Don't go
Yeah,
out
and
for
I'm
one.
not
Don't
doing
go out
that
for one
either.
weekend. That's your
I'm
AC
not.
bill.
So during this pandemic, again, it's helped me to save so much money because I'm not even going out. I'm not going out. I'm not spending a lot of money on drinks. I'm not. And even when I used to go out, gratefully, I had great people who would buy me drinks. And
You see my face?
yeah, keep it like that.
Okay,
It's fine.
okay.
Just because
Collective,
I
as
go.
long as y'all can see my face,
But well, you make
I'm
the
not
assumption.
going
You
out.
make the assumption that just because I go out, I'm buying drinks, or every time I go out, I'm going to a restaurant. I'm like, I'm hanging out at other friends' homes.
So
I'm
when
catching
I
up with
see
loved ones.
your Instagram talk about, oh, let's talk. So you,
That's like on the occasions you see that, but on the occasions you see that too. That doesn't mean I'm not at a friend's house.
oh, okay. Sure. Yeah.
Exactly. And keeping
Okay.
it intimately
I'm gonna leave it
local.
there. We can go ahead.
Anyway,
All
anyway,
all right.
anyway. I'm gonna just say hello, everyone. I hope you all have been doing well since the last
Yes,
time we were on the air. A lot has transpired in the world. I feel like every time
I
this
know.
is an interesting element of life because I feel like every week or every 2 weeks we're off air, like madness happens in the world, and there's a lot to update folks on. But we're
Uh-huh.
not gonna we're not gonna be able to go through all the entire list with everyone today. But
I know.
what I will say is America, we are in some interesting territories, some interesting quarters.
Mm.
And we're here to have those conversations. I'm excited for our celebrity guest, who I'm not going to name just yet.
Yes, yes.
We're going to have a great conversation today regarding more, I'd say, it all relates to our times, right? So it's more of a political conversation, but with a twist, I'd say this time, right? So it's not just overall politics, but really through a particular lens that we'd like to address things based on who is in fact running. So we're excited to have that dialogue, update you all again on some events that have taken place in the world, and just get to chatting and having some conversations. But speaking of what's been going on in the world, NIC, local news and politics, a
Yes.
major announcement happened today, August 11th.
And you know the funny thing? You saw my before this even happened, I submitted
Mm-hmm.
the form because it was something I knew that was going to happen this week, but I didn't expect it to happen today and be announced today. But everyone collective, we have president nominee, or I don't know, what do you call Biden again? Or
He's a president,
Democrat? No, not
Democratic
president.
candidate for
Democratic. Yeah,
presidency.
thank you. Sorry.
Okay, I was
Democratic
like,
chosen. Biden has chosen Kamala Harris as his VP. We all know that he was going to choose a woman. He's said that since about six
right,
months ago,
yeah,
beginning of this year. He wanted to choose a woman if he was able to get the ticket, the Democratic ticket, which he got. And he stuck to his word. And one of the things about Kamala is she's had history, not just with him, but his family personally. Knew his son, they worked together. But not only that, is she's actually has kind of stood up against him. When the whole presidential debates were happening and the running was
mm-hmm.
happening, she kind of attacked him a few times. And even with that, though, a lot of people thought she wasn't going to be able to get that nominee because of that. And he took
Yeah,
it very personal, the way that she attacked him. But he still chose her. She, I think, is the best pick out of everybody that they had on the list. I don't know if you went through that list and saw the list.
I saw
There
it.
was
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta's mayor. There was Chicago's
Stacey
mayor.
Abrams,
Yeah, so Elizabeth
Elizabeth
Warren was in there, but
Warren.
we kind of knew. I kind of knew Elizabeth Warren wasn't going to go for it,
Mm-hmm.
especially because he wanted to focus towards a minority person, a woman of color, black and brown, but somebody that had experience. So I'm glad
Right.
he chose this pick. Uh, and I think for me, the reason why I'm happy is because this can set her up. the same way he was set up. Because a lot of time when you're a VP or you go in the running for a VP, the next time, whether it's 8 years from now, whatever it might be, she will have a nice run and say, I was VP, I did this and I did that, just the same way Biden was. And it puts her on a spotlight too that she hasn't had before. Even though she was a senator out of California, still California is California, West Coast. A lot of people in the Midwest, down south, even East Coast do not know about her. So I've read about her, I followed up on her. So I thought I like the pick. I like the pick. So Bernadine, I want to hear.
I have mixed reviews about the pick, and it's not so much, to be honest, it's not so much that I'm anti Kamala Harris. I think that my feelings towards her fluctuates, to be quite frank. Whether or not I'm in support of her, I think she's been shady. I think she's made some mistakes. I think that everybody does, though. I think that's the world of politics. So it's not that. I think that I'm a little challenged by the racial context of where we are as a country, where we are as a world, and Joe Biden's efforts or decision to pick a Black woman, I think just has me at a point of pause, because I often wonder, like, is this truly because you believe that these are the best candidates for this position? Or is this because you want to make sure that you as a white man are in office? Is this because you have another political agenda that we're not talking about? I think that too often Black and brown people are dismissed and are oppressed in our worlds, but then all of a sudden you have people use us to demonstrate how compassionate they are, how woke they are, how present they are, how committed they are to an equitable agenda, but don't necessarily always live that way or create systems in a world that really operates that way. And so again, I feel really conflicted, and sincerely, I'm reflecting a lot, because I, as a proud Black woman, am wondering, why am I in a position where I'm not ecstatic to see another Black woman be in such a position, like you were saying earlier, right? To be a VP, sure, but it's bigger than just labeling it as an opportunity of representation that's going to change the world. Because again, as a Black woman, we saw it happen with Barack Obama, right? As a Black man, he faced a lot of trauma, a lot of aggression, a lot of targeting, right? Even from Michelle, right. But like they came from Michelle, even when Barack was running, and all of these things. And so that was that first Black family, right? And so now you have a Black woman as vice president who's going to be targeted. She's going to be faced with a lot, right? Given this campaign. But again, I think it's about power still to me. And I think that's what really has me at a moment of pause, because I'm like, who's truly in power and who's truly in control here? So yes, it's a win for us as Black people. Yes, it's a win for Black women, but this is also part of a white man's tactic and strategy. And I think that anytime we're used to strategize and we're not really used as people, right, for the sake of being people, it just puts me at a point of pause. Again, I'm not against it or for it. I'm just taking a moment to really reflect on it, because I'm not the person who's just going to jump for joy just because it's a Black person, or just because it's Kamala Harris, or just because of X, Y, and Z. Like, I have to really take a moment and reflect on, what does that mean for us, right? So there are gains and there are losses, and it's about who's in control of this reality for us right now. And so that's just where I'm at.
My biggest thing with that, just last point on it so we can move on, is in the political game, there's always a game.
Yeah, it's politics.
It's always politics. So you have to play that game. You're gonna get used in order for you to get to where you're going. Same thing with Barack. Remember, young senator coming out of Chicago. They had him display Democratic convention. He goes up, gives a great speech. Take the opportunity. Don't. But
again, that's what I'm saying, though. I'm like, using opportunities, being used, whatever, politics, that's the nature of the world, but that doesn't take away the critical thinking aspect of it. And I think that what I'm talking about is more about critical thinking and really assessing. So I'm not going to have a set reaction whether I'm nay or yay. It's more about, like, I hear the decision, I heard it. I mean, I'm not Joe Biden, I'm not Kamala Harris, like, I'm neither of those people. But again, before I have a real reaction, right, it's just like, well, let me see how this continues to unfold. Because again, yes, this is a game of chess, checkers, life, whatever, right? Like, and so I'm not just going to jump for, I think that me reacting to a Black woman being in office and being in this position is surface level, right? And it's not a surface level conversation when we're talking about the state of a country and the state of a world, especially at a time where the pandemic has been very prevalent, at a time where racial politics has always been present, at a time where the opponent is still Donald Trump, who has his own racial agendas and has made commentary that has been crazy to say potentially for some people, but valid and unsound in cases, right? Like on both sides as well. And so again, I'm thinking very critically about this, where I don't have a strong opinion to say I'm excited or I'm upset. I think, again, my neutral space is I'm at a point of pause, and I'm just, my gut reaction isn't this is exciting. My gut reaction is just like, interesting. I want to continue to see what happens. I'd say in other political news with the world, right, we have a lot going on. As you all know, we are still surviving a pandemic. We've been in lockdown, at least in Massachusetts, since March of 2020. Right now, Donald Trump and his administration are still working on some things on figuring out how they're going to continue to support the people. And so some 4 major decisions that they have yet to really make an announcement on is whether or not they're extending federal employment benefits. The conversation right now is based on how much people are going to get paid. So right now, people are collecting unemployment at about $600 a week. And so the conversation has been, has that been too much? A lot of people are not looking to go back to work because they're making more on unemployment than they have been while they have been employed, right? And giving labor and time. And so the conversation right now is whether or not it's going to decrease from $600 to $400. Where the government's going to contribute 75% of these costs, and then different states will front 25% some way, somehow. The second element of these conversations that we're discussing right now is whether or not to put a pause on payroll taxes. And so for anybody who's made about $100,000 or less, there might be a pause there on how much tax money comes out of your paycheck. Again, trying to find some type of level of balance and supporting people through this. The third point of discussion right now is whether or not we're going to suspend interest rates on federal school loans further. Right now, we're scheduled to see interest rates kick back up after September 30th. So we're looking at October 1st. And so the conversation is whether or not that's going to be extended to the end of the year. So we're looking forward. I know I'm personally looking forward to seeing what's going on there. Even though I've been able to make payments, it's amazing to watch your payments really take away from your overall balance rather than barely scratching the surface.
Like, even if you're paying more, it's like
like you're just seeing like 5 cents
go
down.
Like a roller coaster goes up and down.
Right.
So
let's talk about
right.
Exactly. So we're having these conversations on like principle makes a difference. So where we about to be at? Let us see. And then lastly, whether or not we're gonna have implement an extension to the current eviction ban that is taking place. So now where people are being evicted, these are difficult times. And so they're trying to see if they can tap into more of the government aid and seeing what federal grants or aids and supports can be given to people to, again, prevent eviction. So in the world of local news and politics, we just got Kamala Harris announced as a Black woman VP, but we also are trying to be can we all be allowed to even vote on election day? Are we all, and then it's the stimulus package coming, right? So stimulus package 2.
Well, Congress went
and funding. So
we got to see what happens with that.
Right. So people,
quick shout outs to the Celtics. We're locked into 3rd place for the NBA playoffs. So shout out to the Celtics for going back into the NBA bubble. NBA is doing it the best out of all these other major sports. I know the other major sports people have to travel. Baseball, I feel like every week we're hearing another team, 10 people got diagnosed with COVID. So shout out to NBA for doing that. And of course, we had to talk about Beyonce's Black is King.
Yes, because we could not talk about my sister.
I'm not a big fan of it. This is one of the first projects I was looking at. I was like, it's cool, but That was my feeling towards it. What about you? I'm a Beyonce fan. So for me to say that, I literally watched it. I was like, okay, this is cool. I feel like
I'm just giving you your space.
For saying it real quick. I feel like her art direction hasn't really changed as much. I feel like the whole video, it was like the same type of art direction. There wasn't too many different changes and everything in there. The themes were great, awesome. I love, the costumes and everything like that. The Black culture being represented, great. But looking at it as a whole, I was just like, that's my 2 cents.
I think when it comes to Black excellence, when it comes to women empowerment, when it talks about visionary, when it talks about creativity, when it talks about spontaneity, messages, Black is King it's empowering. I think as a Black woman, as a being, whether or not so what's been interesting to me is that I think that people who are not even Beyonce supporters or people who are not fans of her per se have actually come over and have been like, after this project, like, I'm really into Beyonce. I think she's done a really good job. I think that if my conversation is Beyonce Black is King versus Cardi B and oh my goodness, who was it? Lizzo, Cardi B, and who? No. Oh
Megan
my goodness, Megan Thee Stallion, and what? Yo, the name of their song that I can't even print. I mean, it's P. Is it Pam?
WAP.
What is it?
WAP.
And then WAP, and then what it stands for is what I'm not going to state right now.
I was wondering what it stood for. Okay.
It stands for a lot of inappropriate things, and you know, that debate has been going back and forth because people are sitting here like, wow, you know, we've had like Little Kim, we've had like,
but this is like
Miss Fox. I mean, none of those lyrics. Something about mac and cheese, macaroni. Anyway, I digress because it's not really about Cardi B, but when I think about what our artists, right, what our leading artists are producing, what they're putting out there, what type of content to uplift and empower, right? Like, I'm like, Beyonce could have done a lot of things during this pandemic, and that's something that she chose to put together. And I don't know if she was putting it together before this pandemic, and then just happened to be released. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying. I'm like, so, but there's intentional efforts and commitment to being a creative and producing something for positive messages that leaves a legacy beyond the people who grew up with her, right? So like children can go to this, older generations can go to this. And I think that, again, when I look at everything, I look at it in context. And I think in context, it was empowering and it was powerful. And I think that men and women, children and adults would find something that they could take away from that. Whereas WAP is just different. But
well,
pop culture is real, y'all. So I'm like, a lot's been happening. Black women are part of this conversation in all spaces, from the White House to your bedroom, to your television screen.
We're everywhere.
Wild time.
What about now? We have our special celebrity guest of the week. We're about to add to the stream. Give me 1 second.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Hi.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for being with us. We're so excited. So again, as NIC said, we are now part of our segment where we get to introduce you all to a celebrity guest who's a phenomenal individual, where the Urban Collective, loves to highlight a phenomenal individual who's doing significant work in the greater Boston community, oftentimes going unnoticed. And so without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce you all to Dr. Robbie Goldstein, who is a primary care physician and infectious disease specialist focused on those living with and at risk for HIV, and the medical director for the Transgender Health Program at Mass General Hospital. In addition to seeing his own patients, managing a staff of 10, and teaching at Harvard Medical School, Robbie is the lead author on multiple articles in the New England Journal of Medicine, including analysis of disparities in access to PrEP and the lack of gender parity in clinical trials. Robbie came to Massachusetts nearly 2 decades ago to attend Tufts University, where he completed his undergraduate and graduate degrees, including a PhD in cancer genetics. From there, he joined Massachusetts General Hospital for his medical training and eventually joined the faculty, which is awesome. Growing up in upstate New York, Robbie watched his parents care for their community through their dental practice and eventually spent afternoons after school and throughout the summer and summer vacations working in the office. His parents' example inspired him to become a doctor himself. Robbie and his husband, Ryan, were married in 2008 and currently live in Boston, where Robbie is running for Congress to guarantee every person the care and compassion they need to succeed. So folks, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, I'm so excited to introduce you all to Robbie. So Robbie, take it away and say hello to the people.
Well, that was an amazing introduction. I feel like after the whole story, I was actually quite nervous as I was waiting in sort of the virtual green room that you were going to ask me my opinion on Beyonce. I was
listen.
So like
now that you brought that up, you have to tell us.
You gotta tell us: Beyonce, Cardi B, or Megan Thee Stallion?
I mean, Beyonce always, all day, every day. Sorry, that's who I am.
I love it. There's nothing wrong with that on my part. I'll tell you that.
Thank you for having me on tonight and for the opportunity to share a little bit about what I've done. I mean, you kind of went through the story of what's been happening in Mass General and the work that I've been doing. And the work has always been about caring for communities. It's been about lifting up communities that have been left out for a really long time. That was the work with folks living with HIV and at risk for HIV. That is definitely the work that I'm doing with the trans community. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to talk to you about, like your work and like your transition even into running for Congress, but really thinking about it through that mental health or healthcare really lens, right? Because I think the work you do also focuses on a lot of angles that I think we don't often talk about. And so to be able to bring that to the forefront as well as talking about politics, right? Emerging the two worlds is exciting. So, and I turn it over to you.
Yes. So, Robbie, I know you said that you started and you were a physician. What made you want to take that switch and do a basically 180 and go into the world of politics and become a politician?
Well, I actually don't think it's that much of a 180. Medicine, when it works really well, when the healthcare system is actually working, it's about caring for people, right? Making sure people can live a healthy life. Government should be exactly the same. Government should be about taking care of people. It should be about making sure people have access to healthy communities, safe communities, making sure that they can live a healthy life. So the decision to go from the halls of the hospital to hopefully the halls of Congress was really easy in some ways because it felt like this natural extension. But I think the big thing was that as I worked more and more with the trans community and as the trans health program exponentially grew over the past few years, I saw the power of systems change and the power of when you believe in something, when you know that something is right, that you can actually achieve something that's enormous and has this huge impact across the community, right? And I wanted to move from the hospital world and go out farther into the community and help more people and really try to create that change that we had some success with inside the hospital and the trans health program. So it felt to me like a really natural next step. I know for a lot of people, it seems like, why would you do that? Why would you turn in your stethoscope to go work in Congress? But it feels like the right next step for me.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, like right next steps for you in the importance of always bringing it back to the community. In your bio, we mentioned just how much like your parents' dental experience really inspired you to go into the medical field yourself. And you talk about the community and really addressing inequities, right? So you talk about the trans community. I want to really like focus in on what you've been doing to really address and dismantle inequities in your day-to-day work. So tell us a little bit more about what that in fact looks like with the trans community, what that looks like for people of color, what that looks like for those who are historically marginalized and disregarded.
Yeah. So let's start with my work with folks living with HIV, because it's what I've done for the longest part of my medical career. And the practice that I built was because I kind of started 10 years ago as a practice of people who are newly diagnosed with HIV. And it did not go unnoticed to me that the people that were coming in were people who are Black, people who are Latinx, people who didn't have access to healthcare before their HIV diagnosis, who had never had a conversation about HIV prevention, people who had not had an HIV test probably in 5-10 years. And as you see that, right, and you have those conversations, and I started talking to patients and saying, well, why didn't you have access to the HIV test? What kept you from getting the test? Or why didn't someone talk to you about HIV prevention and pre-exposure prophylaxis? And it was really clear that there were systemic barriers there, that there was a lack of insurance coverage, that the providers that these folks were going to didn't have the conversation that they probably should have had around HIV prevention, that there was a lack of trust with the healthcare system. And so it became really important that my day-to-day work was about rebuilding that trust, having those conversations, making sure people had the access they needed, and then using that opportunity, that time, to then spread that out further in the community. And a lot of the academic work that I did in the hospital and that I continue to do is about, let's look at HIV prevention measures and how often those prevention measures are going out into communities of color. How often are we actually prescribing pre-exposure prophylaxis to Black men and Black women in this country? The answer is very infrequently. Almost never are we prescribing to Black men and Black women in this country.
And why is that?
Right. That has a lot to do with the way that our government set up the Food and Drug Administration. It has a lot to do with the way that pharmaceutical industries have targeted their marketing. It has a lot to do with trust in the healthcare institution, right? These are big, big issues. And the more you dive into it, the more I recognize, oh, we've got to make some big changes here. And those changes have to come out of Washington, right? And so that's where, kind of going back to what I was saying before, it felt like this really natural next step. If I want to fix this, if we're going to fix this broken system, if we're going to make sure that I never have to see another young Black guy come in with a new HIV diagnosis because he didn't have access to prevention, then we've got to fix the bigger system so that we can actually prevent that from happening.
So we're talking about fixing the system. One of the things I know that you want to work on, that you're running on, is providing universal health care. So tell us a little bit more on that, and how can that change in the U.S. when it's been fought? Even Obamacare is getting destroyed by this current administration.
Yeah. So, I believe that healthcare is a human right. I believe that everyone in this country deserves access to healthcare. And to do that, we have to make some serious changes in our healthcare system. I think those changes need to directly address three big issues in healthcare. One is the access thing, right? Making sure there's universal access. Another is cost, because healthcare is really expensive in this country. And the third is equity, because we know that Black and brown individuals in this country are more likely to be uninsured or underinsured and not be able to afford their healthcare. They're more likely to live in parts of the country that haven't expanded Medicaid, haven't opened up the exchanges in the way that they should, haven't provided the healthcare that folks need. So if we're going to fix it, let's fix those three big things. The solution that I think is out there that works is a single payer system, or Medicare for all, or whatever you're going to call it, right? We're having that conversation in Washington. I think that Medicare for all provides us an opportunity to universalize access. Everyone in this country will be covered. It allows us to control costs, because we can start to negotiate the prices of drugs, devices, of care. And it addresses equity, because now all of those communities of color that didn't have access to healthcare before, they're going to have access to healthcare. All of those hospitals that were in those communities that were not being reimbursed and not getting the money that they needed to operate, we're going to make sure that they're infused with the correct amount of money, that they're able to continue to operate and provide care for their local community. We're going to be able to actually address equity by universalizing coverage and making sure we're controlling the cost.
Absolutely. I mean, cost is everything too, especially again in the conversation around equity. It's that access point, right? If you can't afford something, then you just can't benefit from it. And you have that you mentioned earlier, that you no longer want to see like Black men come in because they don't have that preventative care. And I think part of that is not just about access economically, but it's also about shared knowledge, right? And knowing that these resources and spaces even exist. I want to kind of bring it back to really focusing on the historically marginalized population, particularly like those of color. I think oftentimes people of color feel used by the agenda of those who are typically like their oppressors, right? Where people who identify as like white come in and they say like, listen, I have a lot of compassion. I want to support you. I want to work on behalf of you. But all of a sudden our pain to power stories are utilized by other people to push forward their agendas, but still not necessarily changing the game for us. Can you tell us more about like your personal story and your experiences that have really like drawn you to be really compassionate towards the historically marginalized population, and like how that drives you in your work regularly, but like more through like Robbie's eyes and experience?
Let's talk about the Trans Health Program, right? Because I think it's a really great example of a marginalized population, and then a marginalized population within a marginalized population within a marginalized population. Look at Black trans women in this country. They have no access to healthcare. They have the worst healthcare outcomes when it comes to almost everything that we would count, because they've been excluded from the system repeatedly, right? The Trans Health Program happened because in many ways, I had a patient, a trans guy, who came in to the clinic and said, I've never had a provider that I could talk to before. I've never had a provider that I could share my story with. And I really feel like that's important. And wouldn't it be great if this hospital, Mass General Hospital, had a program like that? This was 10 years ago. And I sat with him and we built a great relationship. over 3 years, and I talked to him, and he connected me with other folks in the community, and I listened to him and to his friends and his colleagues and people all across the trans community. And then it came time to do something about it, right? And so it wasn't like I listened and now I'm done and I get to just go build something and further this whole process. But what happened is that we said, okay, let's bring everyone to the table and let's talk about how we actually actualize the program that's going to help you, the program that's going to invest in your community, that is going to reach out to the trans community of color and make sure that they have what they need, that they're being heard, that they're being listened to. And as we began to build the program, it was so important that those voices were driving the process. It's not that they were just part of the process, they were actually driving it. They were in the driver's seat, moving it forward, making sure that every step of the process was about exactly what they needed. Once we were able to get the program up and running, it's not as if that all stopped. There was constant feedback. There is constant conversation about how the trans community of color can be included in this process and can benefit from this process, that their voices are heard. When we see barriers that get put up, even once the trans health program was built, it's because we're able to see them because we're listening to the trans community of color, and they're telling us, I went to this other provider and I didn't feel affirmed, or I wasn't able to go get this surgery done because that hospital didn't make me feel welcomed, or I don't have access to this because of this insurance thing that happened. And we're able to redirect all of our efforts to lift up that voice and make sure that it's heard, right? And make sure that that is the agenda that's moving forward, not my agenda, the agenda of the community that has been left out for a really long time.
Absolutely. And I'd say the agenda of a community that even during these times during the pandemic are being targeted, right? I think about the number of folks in the trans community, not just in healthcare, but just in cultural understanding and love and support, who are killed, beaten, disrespected by their own people in many cases. And I'd even say that in the Black and Brown community too, where Black and Brown folk are taking the lives of Black and Brown human beings who are part of the trans community. So it's the healthcare experience, but then it's also them being able to truly be who they are in the world regularly too.
Yeah.
That needs attention.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So one of my, I would say, you have a lot of the times that, universal healthcare, it's failed, well, not failed, but there's been something that's been spoken about by almost, I feel like, every politician. And you have Big Pharma, which is standing in the way. Why do you think they don't want to have this universal healthcare besides, the money and everything like that that comes with that? Why do you think they have such an opposition against having universal healthcare, where you have other countries that you're seeing it work, Canada, all these other countries that it works, and you see that it benefits the people?
Yeah. One of the things I say a bunch on the campaign trail is that the policies that I'm talking about, and Medicare for All is one of those, they are the right policy for sure. They are morally right. They're the policy that actually moves us in the right direction as a country, but they're also smart. They are economically smart decisions for us to make. And what we have to start doing is showing people that we can be both right and smart at the same time. We can move forward with a policy that actually advances our cause for racial equity in this country, and also saves us a ton of money as a country. And that actually is a really smart decision. And when we start to make those decisions, I think we can bring some people who are not sort of natural constituents or not natural parts of the coalition into the coalition and say, look, we're doing this because we know it's right. You're going to do it because you know it's smart. Whatever, it's still right, and we're going to move it forward. So, even if you don't see that piece of it, we still are going to bring you in to make sure that we can move this forward. And I think, that's what we have to start doing with pharma. And that's what we have to start doing with healthcare administration. That's what we have to start doing with, all the healthcare executives, is show them that this is the right thing to do, because the folks that are being left out right now are our Black and Brown communities across this country, are folks who live predominantly in the South of this country, are folks who have been marginalized for a really long time. It's the right thing for us to move forward. And at the end of the day, we're going to save a lot of money by doing this. And so come on board and help us move forward.
So,
in your experiences, sorry, and in your experiences, like, why do you think there's a lot of resistance there, though, right? So the conversation around race and inequities and injustices in healthcare are not new topics. They're not new realities for us to address. You even mentioned, you were exposed to it with a patient of yours 10 years ago and having a conversation. So, but like, in understanding that this is not a new phenomenon, like, why are we still living in underneath racist ideologies and realities when it comes to healthcare today?
I mean, I think there's a large percentage of people in this country that have seen it for a really long time, but there's a large percentage of people who haven't seen it. And, the past 3 months have changed the minds of a lot of people who, before those 3 months, didn't think they were racist, didn't think that they lived in a racist society, didn't see that our public education system is racist, that our healthcare system is racist, that our housing programs are racist. They didn't see that. And I don't want to say that they were wrong, that they were terrible people, right? Like, I don't think that they were able to see it. They didn't have the words. But over the past 3 months, we've been able to have a conversation as a nation that I do think has really increased that number of people who say, yes, America is racist. Yes, these systems have institutional racism in them. That is 400 years of oppression. That is 400 years that we have to fight against. And we can finally recognize it. That's the first step. The next step is trying to fix it. But until we get that large majority to recognize it, we weren't going to be able to take the next step.
Absolutely. You got to recognize it. Mixed feelings. I mean, when it comes to racial politics and agendas in healthcare, like, I always have mixed feelings about it because, yes, even the comments you made, Robbie, right? And again, you're going in for Congress and you're running for it. And while I'm understanding that a lot of people are becoming more cognizant of these issues or these inequalities today, right, because of these last 3 months, and these 3 months have exacerbated these realities, that also puts me at a point of pause because I also am hesitant to support some of those efforts, recognizing that these are adults, educated individuals, right? Like, Boston is a central hub for medicine, a central hub for higher education. So, like, we don't live in a world where you can truly live and appreciate ignorance. You live in a world where you really should be pushing yourself and you really should know better. And so it's that challenging area of how much do I celebrate the small wins, but then also recognize that those small wins are a disgrace too, because those should not be small wins that were celebrated when 400 years is not a short period of time to be living like this. Right. And so, like, how do we hold people accountable? I'm
so with you, right? It shouldn't have taken a terrible pandemic and then a widely publicized video of an atrocious murder to wake up the nation. That is not what should have happened. Unfortunately, that is in some ways what happened. If you'll let me do this, I'm going to sort of take a little bit of an aside, but you'll see how it comes back. Because there's this national conversation, right, around policing reform and how we can make sure that there's racial justice in our police forces all across the country. And, the House passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which is an amazing first start, amazing first step to move us in the right direction. I think Congresswoman Presley and Senator Warren are pushing forward with bills to end qualified immunity and to make sure people have access to medical care, right? I think we can come up with a comprehensive package that will address some terrible, terrible practices in policing across the country. But it's not enough because those police officers were educated in the public school system. Those police officers grew up in a housing system that's racist. When you have people who have experienced and lived in this racist society for their 50 years, their 60 years, however long they've been alive, we have to recognize that creates a tremendous amount of learned behavior that is very, very hard to move, right? So it is sad to me that it took the events of the past 3 months to wake some people up, to get people to understand what's going on. But we have to recognize that this is so ingrained in our society that people were just blind to it and not able to open their eyes and say, oh my God, everything around me is institutional racism.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I see, go for it.
One of the other kind of sections I wanted to go in with you is women's rights. So it's 2020, and I still can't believe that we're still having this conversation about what a woman should do with her body. and you have men that are sitting here debating this. That's the part that to me still strikes me very like, you're a man. Why are you debating about this? But what are your thoughts on that? And how can we as a society, or the United States, I would say, not even society, as a United States, as a country, work on this and fix this issue that we're not having this conversation still?
Yeah. So my first thought is that I want to go to the highest rooftop and just yell that no man should be telling a woman what she can do with her own body. Like that is just not right. Right. Mm-hmm. So I totally support a woman's right to choose and a woman to make a decision about how she will have a family, when she will have a family, where she will have a family. That is a woman's decision to make with her family, and not made by a politician in Washington. It is unfortunate that we're in this space in 2020, right? We're in a space where Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision, is still under attack this many years later, and that we haven't moved forward with a legislative solution to make sure that abortion is safe and legal in all 50 states. What I think even worse is that we're in a place where we don't recognize that abortion is part of reproductive health care, and that is an enormous piece of healthcare for women and for trans folks and for non-binary folks all across this country. When we talk about reproductive freedom and reproductive justice, it's not simply talking about safe and legal access to abortion. It's also access to cancer screening. It's access to a place where you can go and talk about maybe intimate personal violence, partner violence that has happened. It's a place where you can go and get HIV testing. It's a place where you can get the care that you need. That is reproductive justice. That's reproductive health care. And for some reason, we've lost that part of the conversation. We've got to expand it and recognize that reproductive health care is so much to so many people in this country.
Especially, yeah.
Go ahead. There's this enormous racial justice piece that comes into reproductive justice that we have to really be very explicit and intentional in our discussions, that the people who aren't able to access abortion in this country are Black women. It's Black women who are driving 60 miles, 70 miles, 90 miles in order to access an abortion or reproductive health care. It's Black women that are being told they have to make that drive and then come back 3 days later to get the abortion that they're seeking or to get the care that they need. This is the exaggeration of the racism in the healthcare system. We see it every single day when it comes to reproductive healthcare.
Well, I was going to say, too, in addition to that, for the reproductive healthcare system, it's the opposite side of the spectrum, too, right? So you mentioned the ones that go through the abortions, and I'm grateful to have both of you engaged in this conversation. But then you have infertility rates that are higher for Black women, and you have mortality, infant death rates that are higher for us. You have these experiences with Black women going through postpartum and like not having that level of support, right? So like even in hospital beds, like there are a number of cases where Black women are saying, hey, shortly after they delivered their baby or in the process of delivering their babies, have expressed to their medical team, like, I don't feel well, I feel like something is wrong, are not being heard, and lose their lives, right? Shortly after giving birth, during their birth practices. And like now you have a number of women of color who feel like the way that they can combat the system is by becoming doulas and taking care of their Black women themselves, because our system is not doing it, right? So like earlier, Dr. Robbie, you mentioned like there's a lack of trust. But again, I bring it back to our conversations where we know that there's racial infrastructures and systems at play, even in a space like healthcare. Like our challenges in our debates to even have equitable healthcare systems is a result of racial inequalities, right? And racist infrastructures. But here we still are, right? And so like, what do we do to empower Black women or to educate and to support, I would say, non-Black people to understand that this is a human rights issue and not just something that Black women need to advocate for, right? So like, what does that look like in your field? Like who are your allies? Do you consider yourself an ally? Like, what does your team look like, or what does the medical field look like as far as professionals in engaging in these conversations to lead to change?
Yeah. I mean, like that is so important, right? I think it's important for me when I'm having these conversations about reproductive health care that I'm having the conversation with the lens of sort of the transgender community, making sure that Black trans women and Black trans men are being heard and they're getting the access to the care that they need, that they're getting care from people that understand the challenges that it may have taken to come into the system, right? That they are getting care from people that reflect who they are. It was really important for me when we were building the trans health program that our staff reflected the community, And that's not just meaning that we had trans and non-binary folks on staff. It's that we had folks on staff who were Black and Latinx, who spoke Spanish, who could maybe speak Portuguese, who, could really understand what was happening and reflected folks, because that's how you build trust, right? That when you walk into a medical practice and say it's for reproductive health care, and you see standing there someone who looks like you, someone who speaks the language that you speak, someone who you can imagine has been in that same position before, you are more likely to trust that care. You are more likely to stay, to get the care that you need, to be healthy at the end of all of that. That's what we have to do. That's how you be an ally, is by bringing in all of these folks, all of these voices, and making sure that everyone has access to that.
Absolutely. And talking about voices, I want to hear more about your voice, right? So in your bio too, you mentioned living with your husband here, and like you're running for Congress. I want to ask you, like, do you have any moments of pause with your personal life, like live choices and life choices, with regards to how that plays a role into you running for Congress and you being supported in Congress, or you being discriminated against yourself in Congress? Like, what do you think about? How do you unpack it? How do you combat maybe imposter syndrome, or feeling like I can't, just talk to us about that experience. Like, do you ever have a moment where you're like, this may not be for me, or you're hesitant, or you feel like you're not supported, or you feel overly supported, right? Like, what's that journey like for you?
Yeah. So I have to say, I'll first say that I'm really lucky. I have the best husband in the world. He's amazing. And he's been on my side. It's 18 years at the end of this month that we have been together. We've been married for 12 of those years. We got married in Massachusetts when there were only 3 states in the country that had marriage equality. One of the things that has been part of our thread while we've been together, and part of my voice, is the decision of when to come out and when to share that part of my life with other people, when to share it with patients, when to share it on the campaign trail, when to share it when I'm just talking to folks on the street. And I think it's a really powerful part of my story and who I am, is that I am a gay man, and I'm a gay man who has an amazing husband. I'm a gay man who has marched in the streets for LGBTQ rights and for marriage equality. I'm a gay man who recognizes my privilege as a white gay man, and who recognizes my privilege as a white cisgender gay man. And how that has allowed me access to things that Black gay men don't have access to, that Black trans women don't have access to. And so it's something that's always sort of permeating through my thought process when I'm thinking about, okay, let me take a step back and recognize I can say that because of my privilege. So what wouldn't I be able to say if I was a Black gay man? What wouldn't I be able to do? How do I make sure that the policies I'm talking about on the campaign trail, or the program that I'm building in the hospital, isn't for me? It isn't for me who has the privilege and the ability to walk into MGH, but it's for the people who don't have that and don't have that access. So it's always there. It's always part of the narrative. And I think it makes me, a better listener, because I know that I have to listen. And I know that some people haven't listened to me because of who I am.
That's interesting to say, with the part saying that there's some people that have not listened to you. How have you recently, especially with this whole COVID, how are you getting your vision, your strategies, and everything out there to the people that are supposed to be electing you? Because we're not able to run campaigns the same way because of what happened with this whole COVID pandemic.
Yeah, so it's not easy. We can't go knock on doors, and we can't do a bunch of like big events and big rallies across the district. What we're doing is, I actually launched the campaign before COVID. I launched the campaign in November, and I spent that time sort of pounding the pavement and going to community groups and talking to folks and listening to folks and being a part of the conversation. I was able to transition a lot of that to virtual. We do a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of Facebook Lives, a lot of phone calls and video chats, because I think it's important to talk with people and listen to people and have that visual connection. There was a great opportunity, I think, in the past 3 months with the rallies and the vigils and the conversations that were happening, to do that in person, to have those conversations outside in a safe space, but with other folks from the community. Now, we're pushing forward now in the last 3.5 weeks, largely with virtual events, phone calls, just trying to do what we can to keep people safe.
So
Awesome.
can you let the collective know, what are your top three, I would say not goals, but top three objectives that you're looking forward to working on once you do become elected as a congressman?
Yeah. So the top three things have always been the same since the start of COVID, since the start of the campaign. So healthcare. I'm a doctor. I've worked in the system. I know that we have to fix it. I think we have the political will to fix it, and I think we will fix it in January 2021. The climate. And I think that's become incredibly clear over the past 6 months, the overlapping aspects of healthcare and climate and racial justice, and how those kind of all have in many ways combined to really put Black communities at risk through COVID. If you look at Brockton, which is in the district, highest levels of air pollution, highest number of COVID-19 infections within the district, right? And the part of the district with the greatest number of folks of color that live in the Brockton area. It's not a coincidence that all of those things happen. It's a lot of structural issues. The third big issue that I talk about is racial justice. And it's been part of the message of the campaign from the beginning to say, yes, we need some coordinated bills, as I was talking about, right? The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and bills in the police reform space. But really what we need to do is be intentional and explicit in every single bill that comes out of Washington to address racism. Right, so that every bill, every education bill, housing bill, transportation bill, healthcare bill, explicitly says something about how we move from our racist structure into an anti-racist future. So those are the three big things, the three big messages of this campaign.
Absolutely. So healthcare, climate, and racial justice, which is awesome. Who are you most looking forward to working with? Like, who are some of the people? I'm just curious. Yeah. Like, who? Like, I want to like share offices with them, or just walk down the White House and say hello, like, you know.
Yeah. So number one is Congresswoman Lauren Underwood from Illinois, who a lot of folks, I don't know if many folks know about her. She is unbelievable. She is amazing. She is a public health nurse who ran for office and has really done an amazing job in the past 2 years of pushing forward with healthcare expansion, of talking about voting rights and equity and access, of just being, she is an amazing, amazing woman. Everyone should learn about Lauren Underwood. And from Illinois. Certainly, I'm looking forward to working with Congresswoman Presley. And it would be really nice, you know, that the 7th district, her district, and the 8th district where I'm running, they are neighbors. We share a lot of borders. A lot of interests. I think it might be really fun for the two of us to team up and to do some amazing work.
That's awesome. Well, I hope that you get in there, you get to have these conversations, you get to receive their support, and you all get to build together, right? It's about policy implementation, execution, but through that culturally conscious lens, and that lens that truly prioritizes equity, not just by verbiage, but by action and leadership. So thank you. We love to end our interviews, as always, letting people know where to follow you, how they can support you, how they can just be committed to this campaign, and just, again, ensure that your name is not just on the ballot, but you yourself are in the White House. So where do the people support?
Amazing. Happy to share all that. I thought you were going to ask me what my favorite Beyonce song was.
Oh, well, you can share that too. Go ahead.
Yeah,
talk about Beyonce.
That on there.
Best way for people to check things out are to go to the website, which is robbieforchange.com, ROBBIEFOR change.com. And all of my social media is at Robbie for Change, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And I guess I'll say, God, I like love every Beyonce song. I am like kind of forever going to be in love with Crazy in Love, just because like to watch Beyonce dance in like 4-inch heels to Crazy in Love in any live performance is absolutely amazing. So I'll go with that one.
That is awesome. Crazy in Love. And you have a beautiful love story too. So we'll end there. Thank you so much, Robbie, for your commitment to the people. Again, talking about HIV, the trans community, and then racial justice, and really, again, prioritizing the importance of leading with equity being at the forefront of the work that you do, right? And really prioritizing community. So again, like you started off this conversation by saying, it's not really a 180 or 360 even to be in Congress or to be in a position where you're running. It's always been about the community. It's always been about the people for you. So we wish you nothing but the best. And this campaign, I call it virtual campaigning at this point, because I feel like that's mostly what's been happening for folks. So we wish you the best in virtual campaigning and leading the way, and seeing you in Congress. So thank you so much for being here. If you have any last words for our listeners, feel free to let them know.
I'll just say thank you. I had a great time. This was a great conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of your work. Yeah, we're always happy to have you. Please continue to push too in Boston, in our healthcare system, in the city. I think the world of medicine is really important. Healthcare is really important. Mm-hmm. I think Boston leads the way in a lot of these conversations, but we really need people who are more culturally conscious, I think, to really make this work happen. And so you've been in it. You've been here for more than 2 decades, and we wish you nothing but the best and continued success in all that you do.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right. Have a good night.
Awesome.
Yes, y'all. So that
a little bit to me, but I'm not sure if y'all heard that.
What happened? Oh, you're frozen. Bernadine Truth is frozen right now. She'll be back in a second.
Okay.
I was like,
wait. I was like, what happened?
But we want to say thank you again to especially our guest, Dr. Robbie Goldstein. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your vision on everything that you are trying to do. Those are the people that we need to support. When we choose guests to be on here, a lot of people ask to be on here. There's a reason why we choose certain guests to be on here. It's not just everybody, because a lot of people is running. So we choose who we want on here and are very careful of that. And as you heard, his message is something that he's experienced. He's experienced in the medical field. And everything that he's done and everything that he's trying to do is to help benefit us as a people. And I don't mean just color of your skin, but just us as a people and help us out. So I thank him for coming on. Thank you again to all of our listeners. Thank you to everybody that's downloaded an episode, to anybody that's come onto our website, to everybody that's following us on our social media platforms, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter. Wherever you are following us, thank you. We appreciate each and every single last one of you. You make this show possible. You make us want to do this show. Trust me, there's a lot of times you can ask Bernadine, I'm like, I don't want to do this show. But we're like, no, we have to do it for the people.
Yes, y'all keep us going.
You guys drive us like you do not know. So all the comments, every time you share a story, share a flyer, whatever it is, shout out to everybody that's there. One person I want to shout out, Boston, I gotta shout her out, is Red Shades. Shout out to her. She dropped an amazing album that just got released. Feel the Aura. Go listen to that. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever platform that's out there. You'll be able to listen to it. Go stream that. Listen to a local artist. Great music. So thank you for that. I just wanted to shout her out real quick. I had forgotten to do that at the beginning of the show. But yeah, that's basically it for it.
Awesome. And as always, please be sure to follow us on all of our platforms. Tell a friend to follow and to support the work that we do. Again, as NIC said, we do it for the city, we do it for the culture, we do it for the people, we do it because we are it. We are the change that we've been looking for. And so we lead by change and building legacy, not just when we pass, but as we live and as we continue to exist. So follow us on Twitter at the UC Show 3. Finally got it. The UC Show 3. And then also follow us on Facebook at The Urban Collective Show. Follow us on Instagram at The Urban Collective Show. And as always, feel free to email us if you'd like to be on or think that you have a great suggestion for us to invite and to extend an invitation to somebody to be on. A lot of the work that we do really also comes from word of mouth and like what we see that's going on in our communities. As Anasi said too, it was important for us to have Robbie on the show. I think really talking about a perspective that we don't always get to hear, particularly in the political arena, right? Yeah. So healthcare, I think, is part of people's agendas, but really focusing on HIV and the trans community and the LGBTQIA community is not something we focus on much, I think, as a society, as a culture. And so for him to be able to talk about that and recognize his white male privilege in this work and in this conversation is important. So again, we do it for the city, we do it for the culture, we do it for you, we do it for us. So be sure to follow us and share all of our work. And I see motivational quote.
Yes, as you know, Collective, we always like to end the show with a motivational quote for the week. So this week, I wanted to kind of switch it up. So the quote this week is by Swami Vivekananda. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. But the quote goes like this. Take up one idea. Make that one idea your life. Think of it. Dream of it. Live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, and every part of your body be full of that idea. and just leave every other idea alone, this is the way to success. The reason why I want to do this quote is you have a lot of people that always million ideas out there. Get one, focus on something, work hard at it, go after it, and trust me, if you do, you'll achieve it. Trust me. That's it from your man NIC.
And it's your girl Bernadine Truth. We'll catch y'all later.
Next week. Peace.
Bye.